Hello, 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 and welcome to the Mystic Nerd Squad podcast. Your host here, Kelly Meyerson. I am so excited to welcome Alana Heim to the show tonight. And I'm just going to quick read you her bio because it's a worthwhile read. Alana Heim is the owner and Prosperity Alignment Inc. She serves in a unique role of being a Cosmic Prosperity Activator, guiding you to navigate the energetic currents beneath your work, life, and money so you naturally flow in the river of infinite prosperity. And I was saying before we came on, I was like, who does not want that? I'll have some of that, please. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yay. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. And I think this is such a timely conversation. I think people are really sort of coming out of the past couple years and they're ready for something greater, something bigger, something better. And we all want more time, more energy, and more money to do all the things we want to do. So I'm really excited to talk about prosperity alignment.
Yeah. To me, prosperity basically encompasses everything you just said. It's like the interweavings of everything that we want in life, but somehow we kind of focus specifically on money and think that that's it. And there are people who achieve it and realize it's not it. There's so much more to life. There's so much more to really understanding who you are, to recognize what's important to you.
I love that. So I think one of the huge tenets of what you do is connected to human design. And I am a full-on geek for human design. So I am a 1-3 manifesting generator. And as I was rereading your chapter in the wonderful book, Stop Overworking and Start Overflowing, chapter 15, I was surprised and delighted to see that you're also a 1-3.
Yes. And I gave a little bit about that profile because the way I wrote that chapter, it wasn't just to say, here's my story of, prosperity is this one part. It was more about all the parts. Mm-hmm. So laying it out that, yes, I'm a projector and I have a will center, and just kind of going into the dynamic of using my will center, using my emotional energies, but then also how the 1-3 really operates, where it has to dig deep into all the rabbit holes nobody wants to go in, and it wants to just uproot whatever it can, and then it has to try it on. Like, we have to experiment to see what works. And part of the journey of going up a mountain, which was how I told the story, it was all about the experimenting. How do I work? And how does prosperity work for me? To really lay that foundation for you, the listener, the audience, for anybody to recognize, how do I do it? Because that might be part of your journey, is exploring and figuring it out for yourself.
I love that. And I completely relate to the 1-3. Just like, I can deep dive into something and like resurface 48 hours later, like, wait, I forgot to eat and sleep. Because I can just get so excited about something new and I just want to know everything about it. And what I would say is interesting about the 3, the experimenting, for so long, I sort of had this story of I'm always making mistakes and failing. And I would say I'm the failure. And then when I learned more about my human design and being a line 3, and that my job is to experiment, and I always did that. I always was the experimenter. And then when I figured it out, I had to tell everybody. I was like, oh my gosh, you guys, I need to tell you what I figured out. And now I see that that's part of my design, and I can sort of release that unhelpful story of being a failure, because every time I make a mistake, it's like a little more information, and that I can relate to with the 1. That's information, and it kind of helps me go forward from there and be able to help more people.
Right. And then what's crazy is not everybody experiments like we do. So that's like mind-blowing in itself, because sometimes we keep it to ourselves like, everyone's probably tried this. No. Right. And so it's interesting to recognize, wow, everyone learns differently. And there are some people who just aren't going to try it. Whereas experimenting and my twins are line sixes and they're 8 years old. So it's like I've known, okay, if I tell them the pan is hot, they're not going to believe me. They have to touch it and figure it out for themselves, right? And so I always explain it in that light, that that's what experimenting is. You don't, it's not that you don't believe someone, you just have to do it for yourself to experience it and have the senses and have whatever it is that comes through for you to really understand, oh, that's what that means.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So true. And I was always like, you could tell me till you're blue in the face, but if I can't go move my body and do it myself, it doesn't resonate. It doesn't come through for me. I always love like the labs in school or anything hands-on learning. I was like, yes, I can do this. And I could always figure it out really fast and then teach everybody else. But sit me in a classroom where I have to listen for a long time and integrate it just doesn't get through that way.
Yeah. And then for you being the manifesting generator, you're here to accelerate it and make it work faster and skip steps and see what's more efficient. And it's like, that's so cool because that's not my process. My process isn't to do that. But I am here to then use whatever I learn to share it and help guide people and help them figure out things that work for them in the way that it works for them. And so it's such a beautiful dance in how we all process things differently and we be differently, exactly so that we're playing the role that we're meant to in the collective.
To me, it's one of the most liberating models that I've experienced and found in all of, the spiritual, the personal development. Like it has been the most impactful in my life for sure.
Yeah, I love it. And for me, maybe it's part of the 1-3. I just have to apply it to everything. And that kind of annoys my husband sometimes where he's like, "Oh, so you learned something new. Great." And now I put on these new glasses that are like, everything is in human design and everything is in energy work or, whatever the thing is, because that's how I learn. And
Right.
then I see it differently and then I can integrate it, like you said, so much faster.
Yes, absolutely. So, how did you come into human design? What was your introduction to it? To like kind of changing and shifting career paths to really align more with it?
Yeah, so I found it, or perhaps it found me, when I think around the time I was having my twins. So almost 8 years ago, it was somewhere in that area. The CPA, certified public accountant, during tax seasons or doing work, like sitting at a desk and doing, right, living this generator life. And there was something in me. I think that I lost part of my 1-3 for a long time where I just wasn't really researching and learning. It's kind of like going to college and you had to learn and then almost like not wanting to learn anything for a while. So when it came back, it was in the context of health, which was
Mm-hmm.
really weird. It kind of felt like, I don't know why I keep going down these health rabbit holes, but I just had this sense that I need to know information because I'm supposed to share it and
Mm-hmm.
help people with it. And so there was a point where I started to listen to all kinds of things, and then it was kind of business related. There were self-development kind of came through. And so somewhere in that process, in that time where I would just be at my desk working, I would be listening and doing all these summits. And then I had this notebook and I would take like pause and like take notes, but I'm like still working, but like trying to be the manifesting generator that I'm not. But part of my conditioning, my mom is, and my stepmom and my stepdad, and so lots of infusion there. And so I found human design.
Mm.
One of the podcasts or interviews that I had listened to was Karen Curry Parker, who is where I studied and learned from. And so it was that moment of just like hearing it and already being like, ooh, what is all this? This is fantastic. And taking notes and then doing my chart, of course, and recognizing, wow, I'm a projector. I am not here to be in these grueling tax seasons every year. And so that's where I was starting to recognize that my twins were born in 2014. I ended up making it through the 2016 tax season and then quitting after. and starting prosperity alignment, because I
Mm-hmm.
just once it's like that seed, right? Once the seed of information of awareness is planted, and you just know you can't unknow it. And I'm not a doer, and I had to change something, and it was the way in which I work, which now specifically is guiding, being the consultant, being the advisor, everything I was already, except just in a different layer and level of working financially and with prosperity that I kept seeing was missing in the
Mm-hmm.
financial industry.
Oh my gosh, so much so. And I have to say, as a manifesting generator, I so appreciate my projector friends. And, of course, 1-3, as soon as I figured out my human design, I was like, okay, who else's chart can I run? I'm like, hey, who wants to know what their human design is? And
Yes.
found out like a couple people who are like tried and true advisors for me, and people who will give me the clearest and truest advice are projectors. And so I so appreciate, and generators are such a large portion. I think it's something like 70% of the population is generators, which we need to get things done. But I'm just so fascinated by the way in which projectors best function. And it's sort of like the more you know, it's like the veil is lifted and you're like, ooh, I can kind of see all these interweavings of how people function. And to me, I find it very exciting.
Yeah. It's the nature of kind of where we're already headed, where
Mm-hmm.
everything is shifting. We've been in such a masculine world,
Mm-hmm.
all of the pushing, all this left brain activity, logic, structure, right? Timelines, everything's so linear, and it's all shifting to be more of the feminine, right? Like we really
Mm-hmm.
have to marry the two,
Mm-hmm.
and this right brain, creative, flowing, non-linear aspect of just trusting and seeing what shows up and then getting to respond, or right, it's so different, but it is absolutely where we're headed. We're already in it, and I feel like that's the biggest part that I'm seeing what's shifting financially.
Yeah.
It's been very structured, very much planning. I happen to be the cross of planning, which forever I kind of was like, oh, why am I this cross, right? Because the logic, I only have 3 gates, 2 of which are in my incarnation cross. So there's
Mm-hmm.
really not a lot that I have, but my variable PHS, I have 3 lefts, 1 right. So it's like I see, and it's astrologically in my chart, there's just so many parts. I'm a life path 7. I'm constantly like spiritual and structure. And then that's exactly where I've taken it in my business. I'm here to help people bridge the components together, where a lot of times the spirituality is not part of our financial well-being. It's not how
Yeah.
we process. It's like we want the structure, but I help people recognize where they're here to be and flow and to trust and wait to respond, and use human design in these ways that actually helps them be in that river of infinite prosperity. It just becomes easier when you trust yourself, you align with who you are.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're giving me chills because I am also Life Path 7, and I have the right angle cross of planning. I think the theme is togetherness. So like my purpose is to kind of get people kind of operating, like coming together in a direction, but not to give the specifics as much as I understand it. I'm still studying all this, right? So, but kind of gathering people. And it's so funny because I've always felt this like draw to be more inclusive, to pull more people in, you know. Yeah, that's so interesting. I love it.
Right. And I've kind of recognized, because the sun activates the 37. And so I really see, and being the line 1, it's more foundationally like in this energy of being mother. Like there's this mother energy, and I just see everyone as family, and more I've recognized like that's part of my community channel. It is not bargains and agreements and all the stuff they talk about, because to me it's I'm here to help shift the way in which we plan, and the way in which we actually are excited for life, or get into the details. But some of these systems are changing, and so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
how do we bring in the new and
Mm-hmm.
help people with that, bring them together. So just different ways, right? Based on our experiences and our design type, and everything is such a different flavor, whether
Yeah.
we have certain components that are the same.
Yeah. And I think for me, in my own life experience, I also have an 8-year old.
Mm.
That like becoming a mom, being a working mom, and feeling like the pull to be so many things at once. And, getting into that masculine energy is such an easy thing to do because it's like it's a very clear, like, I do this, I do this, I do this, the more regimented I am. But what I lost out on is like what you were talking about before, like the health, the wellness, the feeling good, the vitality, like having the energy, being excited, being joyful, and forgetting about everything that made me excited about life, losing that zest, still like operating and getting all the things done, but not feeling great, not feeling good, you know?
Yeah, and that's part of the prosperity piece. It's
Mm-hmm.
like such a big component, because how you feel about yourself and the things that you do to honor yourself, that's what you're projecting out. That's what you're
Mm-hmm.
attracting in more of. And if we're all depleted, right? Because this
Mm-hmm.
is this is the big part of having the will center with this cross, having the 3740, and knowing that we want to be resourced, and we
Mm-hmm.
are here to be and
Mm-hmm.
be resourceful, but yet we're depleting all the resources in each other, humanity wise, on the planet, earth wise. And
Mm-hmm.
so it is this level of everything that we've done structurally, systematically. There's a different way, right? We need to tap into more of the feminine quality of the earth and how to use these resources so they replenish and that they're sustainable and we're helping each other. And it's the same thing with finance.
Mm-hmm.
Scarcity is so ingrained in everything.
Yes.
Like, it's like the Federal Reserve and printing money and hoarding for retirement, and just so many components that's the system. And I'm like all for the system totally going down and changing, because we can't put band-aids on it anymore. And that may sound scary to some people, because like, what does it look like? I don't know. That's not my part. My part is
Yeah.
not to be the one to say how. Like,
Yes.
I see parts of it, and I have the 6447, but I don't get into the details. And I know that's where the generators need to come in. And more I've recognized part of my ability is being the projector. I really am of the grid and see what needs to shift.
Mm.
I don't have to do it. And the moment I already see it and have awareness, it starts to shift, right? It's pretty cool. And it's also mind-blowing to be like, wait a minute, you didn't do that. And maybe not, but collectively as projectors, holding the energy that we know needs to be there for sustainability on the planet, for humanity to be more in alignment, and to have and to be, and not just get stuck in the doing, right? Like, that's a big part of what we're currently working with. And I don't know, that's what I'm working with anyway.
100%. I'm with you. I feel the same. I'm getting like full body chills because I'm so excited about what you're saying. And I love it because it's like this very ingrained generational belief, and I see it specifically for women, this like idea, have it all, be it all, do it all, like, and just burning ourselves to the ground over and over again. And it doesn't have to be that way. And the opposite of that is not scarcity. that's like the big, like, if we could take it away anything, it's that the opposite of that is not scarcity. It's bliss. It's, like you said, prosperity. It's having time, energy, money, freedom, being able to choose and live into the things that make you joyful, not just feel like you're here to check off all the boxes, do all the things, and die. And hopefully leave a lot of money behind, right? So
Yeah.
I'm excited about the potential for this to become something so much more in flow. So tell me a little more about, how do you envision this, and what is already changing that we can get excited about?
Right. So I've started dabbling and being in the crypto sphere. with cryptocurrencies because there's something there, right? It's the intention is for it to be decentralized, which is very different, that we're all like indoctrinated into centralization, right? We want to have a bank account that's FDIC insured because if something happens to the bank, we want to make sure that it's protected. We don't lose it. And there's something crazy about thinking like, I'm going to go into crypto and I own my own keys and I'm in charge of it. Very different, right? Because now if you lose your password, it's gone. And the thing is, you're in control. You have responsibility. And what I see in the financial arena, we usually just abdicate that responsibility. We give it away. Whether you came to me as the accountant and said, here, take care of my taxes or do this, or you go to the financial advisor and say, here's all my money. I don't care what you do with it, just manage it for me. Right? There is no ownership. There is no responsibility. So it's so easy for us to say, oh, well, you messed up, your fault, you fix it, you take care of it, right? That's what we've learned. And that's
So true.
that's what's changing. And the big piece is because we've given all this power to this person or this company or to the government in a way that's not sovereignty.
No,
And
it's not.
and we're so attached to the outcome. We're so attached to the money. Like, I don't want to lose it, right? And so suddenly we already live in fear because we think that the moment that goes away, should you move into crypto, and it's so volatile and it's up and it's down, but it's sticking around. And more institutions are jumping in now. More and more governments are creating their own versions. And for me, it's a matter of, I'm here to be sovereign and to really recognize my own powers. And do I really want to just hand those away anymore? And so there's big shifts because there is this dance of people seeing the potential, but also seeing how the factions of control and manipulation and the old scarcity based ways of our systems want to almost kind of infiltrate. And so we're really in this space of, I want people to remember we get to create it. So, what intention are we holding? What are we feeling about it? And if it's fear, we're going to get more of that. Or if we lean into recognizing that we want it to be prosperous, we want everybody to have access and everybody to be in it or have more or whatever it is, to have that flexibility and that freedom to choose where you get to put your money. Nobody tells you, or because I already see there's limits in banking. There's limits in, it's your money, but sometimes you can't get it. And we're starting to see that, and like that happened in Canada. It's starting to happen in countries where they're controlling the people. So financially, that's always the biggest part where our hearts get pulled and we just sink right into fear, which is where they want us to go. And really the invitation is to hold the light, hold the energy, and recognize you don't have to live in fear. When you trust and when you're aligned and living your design, whatever you need is there. That flow, that feminine aspect, it's there to support you. You
Yeah.
really don't need the illusion of these systems, but yet that's what we've known our whole life, right? So that's kind of the big piece of the dance of one aspect of how it's shifting. And again, we have the Federal Reserve that's already working on their own digital currency. Some of it, it's like, I don't even know what that looks like. They already have an infinite banking system. They print what they want, and we already owe once it's printed. So it's these dances of these old systems. They were very manipulative and controlling. Do we want this anymore? We think we do because it's all we know. But really,
Right.
but again, it's like, just like you said, if that was, well, then that means we're working harder and we're all depleted and we're all exhausted. And on the other side is actually the bliss, the joy, the vitality, the trust, the living life, like just seeing what happens, being curious, leaning in. It's like, oh my gosh, that feels so exciting. But yet we're trained to think it's just fear and stop ourselves and
Yeah.
don't even want to entertain it and don't want to move in that direction, which means really we're stagnant. And something's going to change, but is it the way we want it to change?
Yeah. So what's making me so curious now is, okay, let's say Kelly has a mortgage and credit card debt and, bank accounts, and so and a job with a salary and a side hustle. And so how do we go from what we know and the constructs we're existing within to that more blissful state and exist with more prosperity alignment? What does that practically look like? Or if you can't give us that whole big picture, because I know that's a big chunk, what would be like the first steps? How do you start to transition? Because what you're talking about sounds so fun, easy, simple, happy, like all those things, like you said, like being in the flow versus feeling like limited and constricted and.
Yeah. So I would say the first step was the whole pandemic, because so many people were already manifesting that they wanted out of their jobs, and it
Yeah.
happened. So again, change is here. It just might not show up the way in which you think it should, but in all reality, none of us are here to make decisions from our head. We're here to trust our gut, our emotions, our hearts, talk it out, whatever it is, to see what is it that we're creating. So I don't even remember the statistic, and I don't usually think in those kind of logical terms, but I remember it was really ugly, the statistic on how many people liked their jobs or were satisfied or whatever, right? It was awful. Most people are not satisfied. It's a have to, which means if we have 70% of generators who make the world work, and you guys are all burning out because you're not doing what you love, it's already imploding, right? So the pandemic was the start of people recognizing something has to change. And whether they made the choice themselves or the choice was made for them, source, higher spirit, universe, whatever, something was kind of in play to help shake the boat,
Yeah.
and maybe really rock it to a point where things had to change. And people are moving, right? Leaving states, living in places they've always lived. They're leaving. They're not doing it anymore. They're going elsewhere. We're finding that we can work in different ways, and we can find jobs because it's kind of the employee market right now. So if you aren't satisfied with where you have been, and you're actually finally got this fire up and behind you, pushing you to go make a change like you've always wanted, but you couldn't, it's there. When we trust and we follow strategy and we honor the design piece, it just starts to fall like the domino.
Yeah.
So the practical is that you're listening, you're taking action accordingly, and there is going to be all that you need. The prosperity is there for you to pay the bills and to pay the mortgage and to do the things. We get stuck up here
Yep.
because it's immediately like, I can't do that. And people get caught on the money piece of, but if I leave California and I take a pay cut and I'm going to, I don't know, Texas, where the cost of living is lower, but I'm taking a pay cut, right? All of a sudden they're tying it to their self-worth again around, I'm making less. I don't want to do that. It's not worth it. But guess what? It's cheaper in Texas, which means so you're really probably making the same, if not more. And then what's the quality of life that you are actually picking up as a gain? Meaning you don't have all these laws and rules and taxes. It's more flexible, it's more free. Maybe you can actually buy the property you want and have more land, or have the bigger house that you want for less, right? So it's suddenly, the practicality is appearing to people like opportunities, like it just showed up, but it's always been there.
Right.
You're just more in tune and actually attracting and registering it. Now the key is, are you taking action to actually put yourself in this position where prosperity actually is there and it is easier and you're in flow?
Yeah. I feel like part of getting in the flow with me was saying no more frequently and honoring the even if I'm like maybe, that's still a no. Unless it's like yes, like a big yes. It's a no or not now.
Yeah.
And I think, as a manifesting generator, I spent so many years capable of the yes and being like, oh, I can say yes to that. And then I'm also emotional. Mm-hmm. So never riding the wave and saying a lot of yes at the high end of things, committing to things, and then being like, I didn't really want to do that. So I think that's one thing I've learned. And the other is actually resting more. That I become more successful when I rest more, which is
that's huge.
Crazy.
And you're the manifesting generator. So everybody listening, that's coming from a manifesting generator. And I meet so many manifesting generators that are like, I know I've read this. I know I've heard this. I'm supposed to be the Energizer Bunny and I'm supposed to have all this energy and I am exhausted. To which I will usually say, are you actually listening to your sacral? Are you honoring your authority, whatever it may be? Or are you overcommitting and still saying yes to all the things, right? Because it's like, oh, I can do that. I can do that. And are you initiating before you responded is always the biggest piece where you're just like, oh, I'm going to go do this. Mm-hmm. Okay, pause. Mm-hmm. Did you respond to something? Did something show up or did you just think, I'm going to go make it happen? You just skipped the biggest piece to your design that is so important. And to know that you need to rest, we all do. And I feel like, again, that was another blessing of the pandemic. Us undefined sacrals loved it, right? Yeah. And some generators did, but really then it became like, okay, this is not ending. I'm really getting anxious now. Like I need to move. I need to do like, I can't just sit around and rest. And, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this. I have so much time and I have so much stuff to get done. And let me see if still didn't get it all done. Like that's just the never ending. I have way too much that I think I should do. And resting is so huge because that's the feminine. That's like the allowing, the nurturing, the supportive side that we need in all aspects of life, but especially with money. There is a time to just pause and ask and receive and allow what needs to show up instead of thinking you have to push and push and push and like make it happen.
Yeah, so true. And I actually started doing some like significant money work and stuff in like 2019, beginning of 2020. So it was great for the time of the pandemic because I had time to continue with that. So I'm a like track everything coming in, like the pennies, the dollars, the refunds. I track it all. And what's so fascinating is like even in the months that I wasn't working or not working as much, I was sometimes like pulling in more than the hours I worked. And it's confirmation for me that there isn't a trade-off. It isn't I work X hours and I get X dollars. That's not how the energy of money works. And it's funny to me because when I was a kid, I had full like commitment and trust in the universe to bring money to me. I never worried about it until I was like more of an adult. And, as soon as I aligned with that scarcity, it was like, okay, scarcity will be it for you. So to me, I think you're right. It's so much the head game. Yeah. It's so much that mental piece.
And then the action is already part of the mental rut. It's like the Grand Canyon, you've learned how to just navigate and you do the same thing. And to change it and be like, okay, well, how do I get out of the Grand Canyon? Like this thing's pretty big, right? It's changing these parts. And usually it's like these little tweaks that when you know your design, all you have to recognize is, oh my gosh, I wasn't doing that. But you knew it. And it's that part of ourselves where we're like, I knew it. My intuition was there. I knew that, but I didn't listen.
I know. It's like improve your money. I trusted more. I surrendered. I sunk more deeply into rest. I slept better. I took better care of myself. I found joy in the simple things in life. I savored things more rather than like, oh, let me just finish this up and move on to the actual work. And like you said, I think for me, my strategy and authority are so important. I've got to just wait. And as a manifesting generator, waiting is like, come on, come on. But I've learned like the more I sink into the waiting and the resting, the bigger and better the things that come into my field. So it's like, it isn't all these little things. I'm like, I could say yes. I could say yes. I could say yes. It's more like, oh, that's really exciting. I'm really excited about that. And I did that in October. I just was feeling functional burnout. So like I was still operating, doing fine. I was just feeling like not excited about everything and overcommitted in my self-development, which can happen. And I was like, I'm just going to stop for a month. Or I didn't even know how long. I'm stopping. And I'll wait and see like what my intuition tells me. And it was a really, really powerful practice for me. And I just sunk into like daily life and enjoying it. And when I came out of it, my intuition was like, and now you're going to do your podcast that you've been thinking about for too long. So go. And I was like, really? That's what we're going to do? That sounds fun though. Yeah, it can be fun. Just go.
Yeah, that's following the flow. And the flow can be whatever you want it to be, right? And aligning that with the intention of being like, I want to do what's fun. So just bring me fun, right? And then just sit back and be in that waiting, knowing that something will show up that you get to respond to, so that even if you are melancholy in that lower part of the wave, you're like, that feels fun. Ooh, right? And suddenly it's like that much faster of a decision. And that's what I found is if we're emotional, which we both are, the more clarity we have on knowing what we want, the less we need to really wait in the wave, because it's there. It's like you just made it happen. It just showed up, the right person, the right thing. And I always love hearing perspective and how people say, oh my God, this random thing showed up, right? Because it's like, oh, it wasn't random. It was like synchronistic, or you just manifested that, or you know what I mean? It's like you just brought it in. And the hard part is when we don't know what we want and we're waffling and we're wavering because we're so in our head about it, or we're like, oh, should I want that? Like, is that selfless of me, or is that selfish of me? And just all these pieces. It doesn't matter if we're male or female, right? Like there's just certain things. Are we allowing ourselves to actually go for it and claim it and proclaim it and ask for it and then wait for it to show up? Because it will. Sometimes it doesn't quite hit the timing that maybe you're expecting it to, but just being open to receive is so much the equation that we're usually missing financially, because we're always giving and, spending rather than saving or receiving, or, it's why I always wear the infinity sign, because it's the dance. Like that's the flow of money. It goes out, it comes in. And when you can just trust, you're in the flow, right? Yeah. It's almost like the moment you already give it out, you've already appreciated someone somewhere in some way, and it comes right back to you, right? So it's like, it's already yours again. It's fun.
Yeah, I feel that too. And I feel that in, when I feel called to give to someone, whether it's a GoFundMe or somebody's doing something, or, a kid is raising money, like I always get excited. Like that is universe, source energy, love moving through you to that person. So it's not me going into my wallet and being like, I have the $25. It's that I'm called to exchange that energy. And that always feels so good to me.
Yeah. And that's what it's all about. Following the flow of what feels good, feeling energized, joyful, blissful. And we know, like when we're contracting, because it doesn't feel good and we don't want to say yes, but then we're like, oh, but we should, because it's our mom or it's our family or, whatever. Suddenly those shoulds take over and we're not following what's true for us. because somewhere along the line we've judged it and have been judged for it or whatever. It's again another mental piece or another emotional piece that we just really have to work through and let go of and
Mhm.
recognize. Once you create that space, you're going to fill it with exactly what you want, which is more of that flow.
Yeah. And what I get really excited about is as we start to see more people getting into that space, and everybody's journey and purpose and what they're doing with it looks different. But when it's so well aligned and unique to that person, like I just get excited about what are we going to accomplish when we're all in that zone of genius and like lit up with joy about it. What is that going to look like? What is that going to look like for our kids to witness that and to see people like living in pure alignment and joy? That's where I'm like, "Ooh, this is going to be so fun. I can't wait. I'm so excited."
So that's what I see, right? Like that's why I'm excited for these systems to come down, because I see that they really are taking up the space that we need to be free, to create, to be in flow, to have different ways of doing and being. And right now we're so stuck in thinking it has to still stay the same. But even if you look back, I was hearing somebody, I was like listening to continuing education for being a CPA, and it was like they were talking about the CPAs and how even some of them had a hard time when banking became electronic, right? And for many of us, we're like, oh, it was kind of always electronic, or maybe we were right in the cusp. Like part of me, like I had a checkbook, and you got your statement, so there really is a window where I still was there where it wasn't electronic, and then it was, but it was seamless to me. It was like no big deal. I was a kid, you know what I mean? Like I was able to adapt so much
Right.
easier. But we have people on the planet who are very rigid in the way things are, and it's not so easy to adapt. And so every time there's changes, they're having a hard time. And where we're headed, the more we can be in the flow and accepting change and just flowing with it as the river, there's no resistance. There's no heartache. It's not going to be heavy. It's not going to be hard. It's going to be, you are exactly where you're meant to be. So the key is being grounded, being supported, whether you see yourself floating in the river, or yes, you're on a raft, but you're supported. Doesn't matter what else is going on around, but you're just in the flow. You're taken care of. You're supported. And that's the big piece that I really see, because I know we're going to get to where we're all meant to be. It might take a little longer, but trusting and having faith means that we're already creating it.
Yeah. And you know what else? It makes me think like we're in this transitional time and place, right? Moving to, 2025, 2027, when we can anticipate these really big shifts happening. And that doesn't mean that right now in this moment, we can't be feeling our best. And that state of being becomes the way in. The way in is here and now. It's not something that's coming in the distance. We don't have to wait for it. We can be in the here and now. And for me, I see that as freedom. Like I get to choose what I do with my time, my energy, my money, and when I live into that freedom, I have prosperity. And it isn't attached to a dollar amount.
Yeah, it's a feeling, right? So some of us are experiential. There's experiences we want to have, or there's feelings we want to have. That's all part of that right brain creative flow. It's not something that you can specify and like list out on your goals and to-do list, and the things you want to achieve, and it's just being in it. And I feel like that was what was different for me in the pandemic. I was living that. I was coming from that place. My business was already Zoom based, home based business. Like it still operated. Nothing really changed. People find me for human design and prosperity work all over the world. And I was living the life that I wanted. Like I got to be with my kids more, right? They were home, and that was a kind of a challenge, but really it just flowed. And so it's those little pieces of, I think there was a lot going on in the world, but I I don't always go out there. I don't do the shopping. Luckily, my husband does the cooking. And so it was like he would see certain things, but I would just be like, okay, well, I'm going to go work outside, or come on, kids, like, let's be outside. And that's what I love,
Mm-hmm.
helping people, being of service, being in nature, being with my family. I had all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. I did 2 weeks of scarcity and then crashed hard. Working from home, school from home, being at home, and trying to do it the masculine energy, lots of coffee, push, 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 do your best, and I work as an occupational therapist, so we were transitioning to doing telehealth, which was completely new to us. I was comfortable with the virtual platform, but not with how do I transition from working on site at school with supplies with kid to kid on screen and all of that.
Yeah.
But after 2 weeks, I was like, nope, can't do this. I called my husband crying. He was still luckily able to work. I was like, I can't do this. He's like, well, what are we going to do? So we were like, okay, first step, prioritize sleep. Second, create restful spaces in the house. So our bedroom became sacred spaces. We, decided we needed to have a home that felt comfortable. We focused on food and nourishing ourselves. And our workspaces became work, and that's it, and close the door. And family time, rest was huge. Lots of nature, being outside. So yeah, I think it was kind of the life that I didn't know that I wanted, but there were pieces of it that I miss now. I love being on site because I love being with people and in their energy, but there are pieces that I miss from being able to have so much time at home with my family. So I think, you said earlier that perhaps what happened is people were unhappy in their jobs and manifested like in a big group. And that was such an aha for me. I hadn't ever thought about it that way, that so many people being so unhappy. And now what we're seeing is like a shortage of certain kinds of workers because they don't want to do that work anymore. They've moved on to things that make them happier. So
Yeah.
that makes me a little excited.
Well, and when I look around, I'm like, okay, I live in Reno in Nevada. It's like, and we have Sparks that's nearby, but we have like this community that's roughly 300,000 and growing. It's probably already bigger than that now. But like, how many Starbucks do we already have in our town compared to where you live and where there are everywhere, right? Or like, how many fast food places? Like, do you really need that many? So this is the part where I'm seeing where we are depleting the resources
Mm-hmm.
because people want more money. But do you really need it? Are you really creating more value? Is this what people need? No, but we're filling the pockets somewhere. And so it's like this level of recognizing, okay, even for our town, it's like more and more places, fast food places, are closed at night. They're not open all night, or they're like done where you can't even go. And so that's where you started to see some shifts because people, they can't find the people. But the reality is, do you really need 10 locations in one place? Or could you just have a gold mine in the one, right? And just let it be busy and let people come because they really want what you have, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
such a different way. And you see some business models that still keep it. But again, the world wants to be on this trajectory of massive growth, which means they're putting stuff out on every corner and they're wanting to make more and more and have revenue continue up, up, up. But is the demand even there? No. So you can't fill it. And then of course it's like the ego kicks in, like, well, we can't close shop. We don't want to contract. But the reality is, did you really need to expand that big in the first place? Was
Mm.
that what the community needed, or was that what you needed, corporation wise or shareholder wise, right? Like, so it always goes, for me, it always goes back to money. Like, I go down random, rabbit holes where I'm like, I don't even understand why I'm like researching this or going here. And then it ties back to money in some capacity. And I'm like,
Yeah.
of course. And
Mm-hmm.
so that profit drive to just keep making more. But even if people aren't wanting it, do we need that? And so that's the part where I'm seeing we're going to have probably some contraction and maybe start to
Mm-hmm.
see things. And if you already had a mom and pop shop that you loved and you really wanted to support it, you do. And right, they don't need more offices and more operations. They just want the one because they want to be of service and support the people they're here for. That's what we all do as we start businesses, and just we want to be of service. Yes, there's a time and place where maybe we want to help the world, but I'm going to need to do it my way and
Yeah.
honor my energy so that I can achieve it, not in a way that I'm burning myself out, right? And exhausting myself and then needing to somehow rest, but I can't anymore because I've created this world that says I can't. All of this is collapsing. All of these illusions, right, of how things had to be. And maybe we're tied to like, oh gosh, we don't have any more shopping centers being built. And you know what I mean? It's like we
But
have
do we need them?
right. And I have like we have
Yeah.
so much like land and some farmland, and it's disappearing because again it gets built out. But we're headed towards recognizing, how do we take care of the earth? How do we
Mm-hmm.
start managing what we have and help each other in these different ways without thinking it just has to lead to expansion and then more profit and, more growth in depleting the resources.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And you know what? I'm feeling like the idea of conscious consumerism
Mm,
and the power of where you spend your dollars. I live in a small town. I love to do all of my shopping for the holidays in my town, supporting the businesses of people who live here, and not to say that I don't do some Amazon for those very convenient things,
yeah.
um but maybe that too will come to pass and fall, because you know it's like, what do we really need? How much do we really need? I mean, I live in New Jersey, and interestingly enough, today they started a ban on plastic bags in stores.
Mm,
So you have to bring your reusable bags, or you have to purchase them
mm,
in the store. So I mean, there's part of me that's like, okay, so now we're gonna have this over creation of all these reusable bags, and people are going to have thousands of them in their home. But I think the idea of, you know, it's a small step in reducing waste, and
yeah.
in New Jersey, we have sort of a reputation for for waste, and most people judge us by the turnpike. There's more
Mm,
to it than that, but yeah, I feel very called to be a conscious consumer. And
yeah.
I've been on like a steady decluttering for the past 10 years. And
Mm.
I don't know how there's still stuff in my house. It's kind of frightening, but I feel like it like was kind of hiding somewhere, and it just sort of materializes at some point.
Yeah, yeah, we all have way too much stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they have that law in California, and they did that a while back. And there's some places, not Nevada doesn't have that law, but there's some places where, same thing, you could probably get charged for a bag. And most of the time it's like, I'll just carry it. I don't I don't need a bag. But I've seen that and felt that for so long of how wasteful, just like
Mm-hmm.
how abundant we really are with things that we have, and just
Mm-hmm.
how we take it for granted and we just throw it away. And where does it go? And that's like the hardest thing for me, where it's like, but what am I going to do with this? I want to keep it because I almost don't want it to get thrown away into the landfill. But then at the same time, to get rid of stuff is so freeing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It clears so much space and
Mm-hmm.
actually allows for more to come back in. And
Yes.
the reality is every human has way too much stuff, and we're not taking it with us when we leave this planet. So
True
it's
enough.
it's then it's somebody else's problem if we're not getting rid of it and clearing it, and right. And so it is that piece too that ties to prosperity. Are we hoarding, or are
Mm.
we creating the space to allow for that flow and recognizing, okay, maybe I don't have to throw it away. Is there someone I could give it to or regift it, right? And sometimes we have those things of like, but it's not new and I can't give it away if it's not new, but somebody would absolutely love it, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
always that willing exchange to happen between the receiver, the giver, or the buyer and the seller. You just are finding that common ground to make it so.
Yeah. I am so excited about this because the idea of prosperity alignment being earth conscious, being people conscious, being about more giving and healthful receiving. I mean, that feels so delicious to align with, right?
Yeah.
Versus like feeling like the scarcity mindset that's been so placed over money collectively does not feel exciting at all. Yeah, yeah. So I love that. So how can people connect with you, work with you? I'm sure so many people, you've given them an incredible amount of food for thought.
Yeah. So you can find me at prosperityalignment.com, and same handle on Instagram or YouTube. You can put in Prosperity Alignment. I am on Facebook, although that's not my preferred platform. So I have different videos, different things that I've put out over the years, different pieces of information, and you can absolutely connect and book a prosperity breakthrough session, or I do consulting sessions or human design readings. I love weaving and diving into all of these pieces. So anybody who's like, oh my gosh, tell me more about me and help me with this piece, right? Then it's like, yeah, let's just blow it up and help you align with who you're here to be. It's about aligning who you are with what you want and navigating these energies. And once you know these pieces, you can understand yourself, your process, your way, and then you're just in that prosperity flow.
Yeah, I love this. I'm so excited, and I just want to, talk again about the book, Stop Overworking, Start Overflowing. And you can get juicy bits from Alana in her chapter 15, Navigating Your Energetic Currents, A Path to Prosperity. And I just have to tell you all that she gives you an incredible tool that is a step-by-step guide for those of you who like to go step by step. Color by number works for you. And there's so many beautiful resources that go with this on your website too, which I think is such a gift to people. Anything else you'd like to offer to everyone tonight?
I just want to say that I absolutely know that you already are prosperity. Like the essence of that energy is within you. And so if you want to connect with me and reach out to me, then I'm happy to give you a remote energy transmission, one that is specific, that maybe calls to you or is supportive for you. So you can absolutely message me or email me or contact me. And I'm just going to put it there as my invitation. So that way you can sit with it, receive it, and then take action if it feels aligned for you.
I love it. I love it so much. I'm so grateful for you for being here and for having this amazing conversation. I'm like super excited about what's coming next. I can't wait. And it's also super fun to talk to another 1-3 with emotional authority. Also have a defined will center. So I feel you. I have that will, open head and ajna and root. So we know what that feels like. That pressure cooker all the time and getting everybody's stuff. But I love what you have to say about everything kind of crumbling and being rebuilt in a more amazing way, more alignment with the planet, with people. So I thank you so much, and come back anytime to talk to us more about this. I think this is just the start to this conversation. I'm really excited for more.
Yeah, that would be so much fun. And thank you, everyone. I send you big love, and remember that as everything's crumbling, you're not. You're actually growing stronger.
I love it. We'll leave it at that. All right. Have a great day, everybody. And remember to stay curious. Bye, everybody.